Everyone, welcome to another edition of Founder Wisdom Podcast. Today we have Larry Greene with us. He's CEO and founder at Navigating Our Future. We're going to talk about a bunch of interesting things, amongst other things. One of my favorite topics, social entrepreneurship. Larry, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about Navigating Our Future?
Sure, Charles. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. And a big believer in entrepreneurship in general, but very definitely, as you mentioned, social entrepreneurship. So let me first of all define at least a definition. It may not be the ultimate definition of a social entrepreneur, but a social entrepreneur is a person who pursues, let's say, normal or novel applications to potentially solve community-based problems. So I've always had that attitude. I started out in the mass media direct response business back in the mid 70s, and that's really where I became really skilled as an entrepreneur in building a business that generated millions. And but I was always really looking at how can this powerful media be used to affect the important social, environmental, and economic change. So I've always been willing to take risks, and while I was building that business, I got more and more involved in environmental and what is termed now sustainable or regenerative community development, and also democracy. And a great believer in stronger democracy. So I began to focus more of my efforts in that area. Eventually sold my company in 2005 to go full time into this endeavor, and it really connects with my life's purpose, I feel, which is really to use my skills and participate with others in improving quality of life for all human and non-human species. And I did a lot of this work on a national level, but it was very, very difficult to do. And I had always believed that really where this should start is at the community level, and really within each of us, to change how we view the world. And so Navigating Our Future, while we did work in the early 2000s, I began to bring it back home in 2020, and once again began to look at not only the communities in which I live, which was at that time the San Juan Islands in Northwest Washington, but also as I began to study more and more about the work that had to be done, I realized that while we don't have tremendous power at the federal or national level, and even at the state level, bioregions really is where the focus can take place. So we live in an area known as the Salish Sea bioregion, which has about 8.7 million people from Vancouver, BC, down to south of Seattle. That's what the bioregion encompasses. And really, it's all about the project Navigating Our Future is to, first of all, inform people about the challenges we face, and most importantly, the options and choices that we have available to us. Do we continue on the current path and with the current concepts of capitalism, or are we looking at the extensive damages that capitalism does cause? And can we change that concept of capitalism? Can we go to a more pluralistic concept, which encompasses not only a business, particularly as epitomized by B corporations, corporations and businesses that are have as their charter, social, economic, and environmental change, but also, with cooperatives and nonprofits and others that pursue it. So I am pursuing my work in a nonprofit format, for many reasons, but really my purpose is, again, to see if we can, going back to the founding of our country, really begin to look at posterity. What do we owe future generations on this earth? And at my age, I've made this my primary focus.
That's really cool. And I want to talk about that focus. So I'm curious if you've seen the ins and outs of the capitalist world. You've had the money, you've had the toys, and the wealth, and you decided that you had a bigger purpose than that. Can you walk us through that process in your life in which you exited out of your companies and that transition to the nonprofit world?
Sure, I'd be happy to do so. Well, as I said, I was always interested in this. Back in the 70s, I created a health-based organization in the San Francisco Bay Area, and eventually got into the 800 toll-free business, direct response marketing, primarily on television. So that's why it was mass media. And again, I was looking at this, but the turning point for me that really moved me in this direction was the birth of my first child, December 15th, 1980. And on her 1-month-old birthday, I saw Carl Sagan's last show in Cosmos. And that last show basically said that we're on a suicide path. Now, primarily, he was talking about his concern about nuclear war. But he was also one of the early people who was beginning to look at our climate and the challenges we were having with global warming. And about that time, I was also investigating that and did a lot of work in that particular area. But that was really the impetus. The impetus went from the world my children were going to be growing up in, and eventually expanded that focus to all future generations, all children on the planet. I felt and still feel a tremendous responsibility to make that world a better place. And this is what takes me back to our founding principles. The founding fathers always talked about posterity. Their work was always focused on what are we leaving future generations. And I think in many cases, our perspective in this country has become much shorter in vision to the here and now, and what can I do for myself, and really not thinking about society as much. So I think we need to get back to the founding principles of what our country was all about, and we also need a much stronger democracy, one that engages people in doing more than just voting.
Wow, lots to unpack here. But I'm just curious, nowadays, are you still driven by money, or do you have that side figured out and you spend most of your time going for social impact?
100% social impact. I wouldn't say that money is not important. I have, as most entrepreneurs, whether I was in the for-profit business sector or this work, I have always funded my work. And I would say at my age right now, at 78, my interest is really much more in the social vein. And that's not to say, as an entrepreneur, that I don't want to be compensated for my work. It's not my driving purpose, but it is certainly a goal. I think that people doing this work are not valued to the extent that they should be. And I certainly feel that what I'm contributing is value. And so, like anybody else, I need finances to live. And so it's always there, but the driving force is really to impact social, economic, political, and environmental change.
Yeah, that's certainly gonna be a longer lasting legacy for sure. And I'm sure you often get that, but like you're the youngest looking 78-year-old I've talked to in a while. I want to come back to the democracy vision that you have. Me, I've almost lost faith in democracy, or the way it's being used nowadays, like people electing Trump and so forth. And that, yeah, like people can say all they want about politics, but I mean, it doesn't take a really smart person to understand that electing that leader was nothing good for the US and the world. Um, Although that's arguable too, but what would be a better democracy according to you?
Well, I think where it starts is with each individual. Where it starts is how we view the world. Right now, our democracy is dominated by a capitalistic economic system, which permeates politics, and really is really what many have called, the number of different ways of defining it, a take, make, waste economy. Take the exploit people and the environment for materials, make materials, sell those materials, push consumerism, and then take those products that have been made and trash them. And so we have this huge waste problem in our society to begin with. And that particular approach has led to the sixth extinction of the species. It's led to climate crises related challenges, which cost us hundreds of billions of dollars. And it's not a smart way to go. It's a way of destroying all of our human, economic and environmental and physical capital is really what's happening. So we need a new kind of capitalism. Now, I have believed that that socially responsible capitalism is a way to go. The problem is that it is not a powerful driver in our society. While there is a lot of money going into social impact investing and other things, it's still only a small percentage of what's going on, and we're still going down the track in that area. And what has happened is those powerful and wealthy entities have really dominated our democratic, our political system. And so you see all of this dysfunction in politics. I don't believe that we as individuals can change things as readily on a national level or even a global level unless we start in our local communities, and we start by beginning to change how we view the world from a one of destroying all of those essential areas of natural and human capital and begin building it back up. And so that means choosing a more life-affirming path going forward. So my concept of democracy is really strong democracy, starting at the community level, where individuals get more involved in the decisions that are impacting their lives directly. And so it's empowering. It really is giving individuals more agency in developing their future. So for example, that's why I look at a bioregion. People in a community, as opposed to the kind of politics we're seeing at the national level, have much more in common with one another. They have shared interests. And in many cases, when they get together in a proper environment, they find that they have shared values and principles. And going from there, they can develop shared purpose. So for example, my approach has been in the past and still is, educate people first about the options that are available to them. Take a look at the current way that we view the world. Take a look at alternative ways to view it. And then in a setting where people kind of put their biases on the shelf and enter into a conversation with others, preferably in person, but also in our internet connected world, it can be done online, and are facilitated through a process of dialogue. What are your concerns? What are your fears? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? What type of community do you want to have in the future? And then going into a process of deliberation, looking at those options and seeing if we can come to some common agreement. Is there some common ground that we can build upon to begin to make decisions? And then the key is, how do we bring those decisions to such a point where we can take effective action? Now, I did that in the San Juan Islands in the early 2000s, and it led, for example, to the first change in county government in 116 years. It led to many more homes being built using alternative sustainable practices in doing so. It led to the integration of different technologies that existed at that time to solve problems in the local community. For example, one farmer was having trouble during the summer seasons when it wasn't raining to get water from his pond up to his fields without burning a lot of electricity. So one of the experts in the area in solar put a solar panel on top of his barn with a pump going down into his pond to pump that water up into his fields during the summer months. So, I mean, there's so many different options when you begin to look at the opportunities we have, it's great. So if you're looking at it from an entrepreneurial perspective and you have your values and principles moving in that direction, I think what we find through many different organizations like greenbiz.com, Drawdown, Project Drawdown, we begin to see that there are lots of opportunities for entrepreneurs to get in there and begin to do things. Now, energy is an obvious place to start, but there's so many other opportunities that exist out there for us to do it. And there are also new concepts that have come out in the last few years. The concept of a circular economy, design products from the beginning with an understanding that while they may go past their use, their specific use in a particular application, that doesn't mean that that's the end of the road for that particular technology. So it's really, instead of wasting and throwing things away, it gets into reuse, recycling, and things of that nature. So there are many, many different examples. The problem is that most people don't know about it. So my challenge, the challenge I'm focused on, as at a time when people have very, very short attention spans, how do we basically reach people and get them engaged and interested in doing more work? And right now we have incredible distractions, everything from a husband and wife or a couple working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. They don't have the time. And this is many younger people in their 20s and 30s and early 40s. They don't have the time to get involved in these critical issues that are going to be impacting their lives and their children's lives, but they are needed more than ever to be involved in that process. So it's cutting through all the noise. I see a huge challenge in the communications area in cutting through that noise. And I have to say, I have not been particularly successful, but I think as an entrepreneur, I'm continuing to look at what isn't working, willing to take the risk, and basically continue on a path, even though I haven't been as successful as I was when I was selling, direct response marketing. But it's the path that I'm on.
Yeah, and the podcast, the community, where can people find out more about you?
Well, if you go to navigatingourfuture.org, okay, that's where you can see what we're doing. And we're starting out with the first phase being educating people about the options available to us. We're going to be relaunching the series in January. And we're starting with this big issue of, first of all, do we need to change the way we view the world? And then we're going to move in with a number of people who are developing resilient, regenerative communities. How are they doing it? How are they dealing with, in our area, the health of the marine environment? So that, because that's so critical to not only the livelihood, but the lives of people in this region. How do we deal with new economic opportunities? How do we expand local business and regional business? How do we begin businesses like B corporations that really do take the triple bottom line of economic, social, and environmental goals to heart? And how do we convince other businesses to move in that direction as well for our future?
Love it. Well, Larry, we're already out of time. I could talk to you for hours because this is like so interesting, and I see we share a lot of common interests here. But thanks for coming today, and hope people can find out more about you. Your website, just to remind people, is this one here. So navigating or future.org, and people can find out more on LinkedIn about you, Larry Greene. Thank you so much for showing up today.
Thank you, Charles. I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with you.